I think similar to how I felt at the combine. I've done, I've dove deeper into more of the data on it, and just thought more about it as well. And my position hasn't really changed at all. I feel where I'm most concerned is, even though there's not significant data out there to this point, my biggest concern is the health and safety of the players, first and foremost.
What are you seeing with the health and safety of the players? Since, as you said, there is really no data to say there's injuries. Like, what are you seeing that has you concerned?
I think anytime you get in, it's two things. It's force, added force, number one, and then the posture of the players. Being asked to execute that type of play, that's where my concern comes in.
Do you think you'll continue to run the play if it remains, and you have concerns about the safety? Do you think you'll continue to run it? Because I think you ran it quite a bit last year.
A form of it, right? A form of it. So I think it's a loose term, really, in terms of what defines a tush push. So there's different forms of it out there. I know we are one of the teams that people identify that run it. That's fair. There's other teams as well. So we're gonna always act in a way that's best for the health and safety of the players, and I think that's the responsible way to go.
There's no actual health and safety data showing that there's any problem with it after we've seen over 300 something snaps specifically in Philadelphia. Then how much more data do you need? Is it the hope that there's going to be injury that those would be opposed to it?
Well, number one, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get too deep into that situation there in terms of how much data, how much sample. I don't think that's really always the best way to go. I think is when you're looking at, there's other data out there that suggests when you're in a posture like we're talking about, that can lead to serious injury, and I think being responsible and proactive in that regard is the right way to go.
Sean, there's a lot of people who think it's super interesting that your team is so good at it, yet you have this stance. Can you say why it's important for you to take off your coaching hat and put on your competition committee hat?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm tasked to do as a committee member, is to do what's best for the overall game and growing the game the right way. And yes, we do a form of this play, and we do it well. I believe us in Philadelphia, who both run a form of this play and do it well, I believe both teams can be just as good in a traditional form of a quarterback sneak, and they've shown that over the years. Philadelphia and us, both teams have shown that, and that's also partly why I believe what I believe.
So far, I was wondering as well, how much have you tweaked the play to where there's not a shove, it's more traditional? How much of the effectiveness are you losing in that situation? If you no longer push, if you tweak it so that you're not shoving, how much of the effectiveness of the play do you lose?
The numbers suggest very little, if any, and sometimes the numbers actually go the other way. So to me, again, we as coaches, this is the NFL, so this is the best of the best, and we've adjusted over the years, and we'll continue to adjust, and that's what's good for our game.
What kind of player the Cowboys getting in Curry? And why didn't work him up with?
Kyer, has put in a lot of time. He really he was a hard worker for us. He had opportunities for us and had some good moments, and I'm sure moments he wants back. And at the end of the day, we're happy for Kyer and his family.
As a defensive backs coach by trade, what do you think of the proposal that you eliminate an automatic first down for holding or illegal contact?
Yeah, that's a tricky one there. I think on the surface, there'd be some things we would need to work through to make that a little bit more specific to the game right now. There's some things you could do to kind of navigate if that rule goes through on the whole, right? So generally speaking, I've heard of some adjustments maybe to the proposal that I think are some good ideas, but more conversations I think are important as we go.
When you talk about the posture for the tush push being the potential danger, how is the posture different for that play than just a regular QB sneak?
Well, I mean, you look at the film and tell me what you see. So like I said, there's different forms of it. I'm not going to get specific to the teams, but there's different forms of it, and I just believe that that posture that I've seen is not, and the doctors talk about that, and so I'm going off of some what they're saying as well too. So that posture is not a healthy posture to be in. And then when you add force potentially to that posture, that's concerning for me in terms of the health and safety of the players.
Just to be clear, is it the posture of the offensive line? Is it the posture the defensive line takes to combat the play? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I mean, when one team takes when one side of the ball takes a certain posture, the other side has to adjust to fit the situation.
On that, when it relates to this specific rule and how it's written, I hear you loud and clear on the posture. Does the rule as it's written prohibit or ban or take out that posture that seems to be sort of the crux of the argument against it? Because as I understand the rule, it doesn't seem like it takes care of that posture.
Yeah, I mean, now we're getting into the weeds a little bit here. So the rule, look, the proposal from Green Bay, is that what you're referring to? To me, it takes away the force, right? That is, traditional quarterback sneaks have been around for a long time. I think that's the context of it that's important. And then, the pushing of it adds the force piece, which again I think that exponentially raises my concern. And that's again, I'm not a doctor. That's just what I'm going off of.
Have you heard from teams that, have you heard the conversation about what immediately means in the proposal of like pushing immediately at the snap versus like...
I've heard that conversation.
Yeah,
I've heard that question.
What are the questions and what the answer is like?
Well, I don't have that answer. That's I think you got to go to the source of the proposal and the rule.
Sean, your reaction to seeing Stephon Diggs back in the division, and what kind of player the Patriots get?
Yeah, happy for Steph. I mean, I know he went through that serious injury last year. That's tough to watch. He's a great player, and he'll be a great addition to their team. I mean, New England's obviously loading up, and they've done a great job. They've got, Vrabes there now, Josh McDaniels, two really good coaches. I have a lot of respect for.
What about Mac Hollins? What kind of player are they getting?
Yeah, Mac as well. I mean, again, Mac was a big glue guy for us, right? He not only played offense, he played special teams, did it at a high level. I thought he really made an impact on our team and our culture last year.
Coach John, what have been some of the keys to you all building out your pass rush?
What are the keys for us to do that?
Having built it out and being able to attack from that posture.
Well, that's a point of emphasis for us, and like it is probably for most teams of building the defensive line to where we need to have it. That's a position that we value greatly.
Look at with what you missed from Mac regarding core four, special teams, and who on your team do you identify, or is that something that materializes?
Well, we're probably, with Mac not being here, we're probably down a big piece in that regard. We look for these special teams aces, the Taiwan Joneses, the Mac Hollins, and guys that can be real force players for us on special teams, four core guys, or dominant in two of the phases perhaps. And so, with Mac, leaving, we're going to have to fill that void.
Your thoughts on, in a lot of organizations, there's core four guys who are there, and they're there, they're fixtures. You've kind of circled through, and we can go with Tyler Matakevich. You lost him recently too. Are you a believer of that, of like having them there and keeping them and having that foundational piece?
I am. I think that's an area that we need to address. Get back to addressing more this year. The Matakeviches of the world, Taiwan Jones, Saran Neals. We've had some of those big time pieces, and I think it's important with potentially where this kickoff rule is going to go, that we continue to have those pieces, because special teams is not going anywhere. It's in the game, and it's here to stay.
What does the next step for Greg Rousseau look like?
I'm sorry?
What does the next step for Rousseau look like?
Yeah, happy for Greg first and foremost, and his family's worked hard. And again, re-signing our own is a good first step. Now it's about how do we continue to improve our roster? How do we continue to get ourselves where we need to be? overall as a football team, and for Greg in this case, it's really I would say consistency and the nastiness that's got to come with playing defensive line on a consistent basis.
Brandon told us yesterday is Josh Palmer has a lot of untapped potential. As a coaching staff, how do you find somebody's potential like that?
How do we find Josh? How do you unlock it to develop? Well, again, I think it starts with the culture that we have and the foundation, and how we get guys to become the best versions of themselves through team messaging, things like, hey, how we handle the schedule, our locker room, led by Josh, of course, among others, right? So I think that's the start, and then how we handle our strength and conditioning program, how we handle the training room, and what we expect of the players, giving them the sports science edge that we think we can give them. I mean, that's all kind of the launching pad, if you will, to helping guys really unlock, as you asked about, in this case, Josh.
Specific example over the course of the years for your coaching staff where there's been a player you've been super proud of maybe you got them and they hadn't quite reached that yet, and then you saw the best version of themselves in either Buffalo or before you got to Buffalo?
Well, I mean, just the one that people always talk about is Micah and Jordan, right? When you look back at when we got them in the free agent process and kind of where they were in their careers and the roles that they had played up to that point, and then what we asked them to do, and then what they became, really, and that's a credit to them as well. It's always both, right? The player and the culture, the system, if you will. I think our coaches do a phenomenal job of that, right? And that's why it's important to have the right coaches in the building and guys that can teach, can develop, and inspire players to become what those two became.
Sean, you said the Lions' proposal for the automatic first down. There's been tweaks to the proposal?
No, not tweaks to the proposal, just ideas around the proposal. Yeah.
It's either the first down or not. I mean, what could you possibly change?
Those weren't my ideas. Those are just things I've heard, some of the kind of scuttlebutt around the ideas around the rule proposal that I think, if adopted, would potentially help it move forward even more. And that's up to the process now.
One of the other ones being discussed is the playoff seeding.